We've just seen now a further connection in the series of talks we've heard today. We started out hearing about some of the new developments in connecting and convenience with consumers. We heard about functionality in foods, and we just got some really deep insights into the psychology of consumer behavior, again, which is so very important in making those connections with consumers, but also ultimately in realizing the value in the products that we produce. So I think that deeper understanding really is a good point to launch from. But as I was listening to it, I was reflected on two things. On the one hand, we heard a lot about kids. We heard about kids in a number of instances today, but ultimately, I think it reflects back on what my mother used to say. She said, you know, we grow old and our outer wrapping changes. You can see the wear and tear of the ages, but inside of us there's always a child that still remains. And I think that, some of those packages that aimed at children are really aimed at all of us. The other thing that I thought, we're already here in Australia moving in some of these directions. For example, in the area of social responsibility, we have the EnviroVeg program, and a way of extending that social responsibility, that sustainability, and making consumers aware of the value that they're getting when they buy an EnviroVeg labeled product. We have now 45 minutes for time to have discussion and questions. And before I open it to the audience, what I'd like to do is to ask our panel members to reflect on what's been said. There's been a lot of synergy in some of those talks, and I hope that will give us an opportunity for you to think and to and bring your questions to the floor. Again, I just want to emphasize that we're here to listen to what you have to say, and ultimately hope we can take some of the ideas away from today's seminar to lead the future R&D that will help to the industry to grow and thrive. So with that said, can I just turn to our panel members and just ask if each of you might just take a few minutes to reflect on what's been said today. Perhaps if you have anything you'd like to add to what you said earlier. So start with Tim, perhaps.
Well, sure. I'll be happy to take a first shot at that. I guess what I saw in the connection of all three presentations was you're in a complex marketplace that's changing every day. The demand for health and foods that solve problems, solve needs, the opportunity that exists for you to connect in that vein. In order to do that, you have to understand the consumer. You have to know what motivates them, but ultimately you have to think about your business 5-10 years out and recognize you're going to have to figure out ways to change your business that match up with these major trends and these changes in the marketplace. And the more you know about them, the more you can learn about them and find resources to help you learn about them, the more likely you are to begin to experiment with the right things as you figure out how to transition your business. And that's critical, that you experiment cheaply. Don't bet the farm on one idea, but build a system of approaching change and new product introduction into your business so that you can get where you need to go over time.
Xiao?
Yes. What I think is important is that, as everybody else said, that the marketing is changing all the time, and there's new trend coming up. In the United States, I think on one hand, people like to have natural, organic, fresh produce on the shelf to be available. And on the other hand, with the busy life of new generation, I don't think they're going to spend a lot of time at home cooking using fresh ingredient either. So they still need to have a large demand for the processed food. But I don't know about Australia, but in the United States, it has been going on for a while that processed food is kind of on the hot spot, and they kind of being associated with a lot of negative effect on human health with high fat, high sugar, and cheap ingredient, and so on. But I definitely see a lot of efforts from U.S. food industry, for example, the huge food industries, for example, PepsiCo and Coca-Cola, which kind of infamous for their product in terms of health benefits, and they have been working with us, try to come up with new innovations, product idea, and to solve the challenges where they can incorporate more healthier type of options to their product lines. So I think that's definitely something in the future. As a producer grower, I think that's also very important to think about, to see whether you can have ability or chance to produce more healthier type of vegetables. As I said, like how much biotic component are there in your products, and so on. Yeah, thank you.
And finally, David Lundahl.
One of the greatest challenges that we have, in this industry, is how do we feed the world? In a world, we're going to need 50% more food production by 2050, according to some of the numbers that I've seen. And okay, so how are we going to do that? That's a huge challenge, and I think it's a challenge that is going to take a lot of innovation throughout this whole supply chain. Whether you're a grower, ways to get product to people in mega cities in the world. So I think being in where you are sitting in Australia, you're in a fantastic location for being able to play a huge role in that. And so I challenge you to help solve this problem. And it's going to take food scientists, growers, food processors, people to be able to, food distributors, but more importantly, people are not going to buy these products unless you can create value in ways that they will recognize. So think of the cultural, so my last point is thinking in order to be successful, we really need to understand cultural cues. What are the cultural cues in different food forms that you could provide because of fruits and vegetables are highly nutritious, an important piece in this solving this to feed the world. But what are the cultural cues that, so you got to do your homework. You got to do the research to understand how to create food forms that people in different cultures of the world will recognize as valuable, beneficial for them, and something that they will accept. So to me, that's one of the biggest challenges of our age. And those that figure it out are going to, will grow their businesses and do quite well.
Thank you. So we have time now for members of the audience to ask questions of the panel and also to share your own thoughts and reflections on what we've heard today. We have a microphone which will be circulating, so if you could put up your hand if you want to ask a question, we'll pass that microphone to you. So in the back there. Can I ask you to give your name and tell us a bit about your background before you ask your question, please?
Yeah, my name is Marcus Branson, and I'm a grower from Tasmania. I think my question is for Mr. O'Connor. You mentioned that organic is a growing segment in the market, and more people are seeking or desiring organically grown food. Do you think the reason for that is because it's perceived as pesticide-free? And if that is the case, do you think that conventional growers would have the same opportunity if they marketed their produce in the same way? For example, if they grew their produce through an IPM program or something like that.
If I understand your question correctly, a certified pesticide-free product would have trouble in the U.S. competing with organic because organic is a standard that's been established by the United States Department of Agriculture. And so you go through a certification process and you get to use the organic symbol from USDA when you meet those specs. So that's the gold standard. You are organic. A pesticide-free program, if it were not given the USDA organic seal, would be your own brand's communication. And so I think you'd be challenged to communicate that effectively in the marketplace when the consumer's looking for the USDA organic seal. And I'll give you an example. The potato industry in the state of Wisconsin have been working a long time on a program where they're using less inputs. They're not using no inputs, but they're using less inputs. And they've partnered up with some NGO groups, the World Wildlife Fund being one of them. And we're able to put those symbols on their package to communicate to consumers these are more sustainable products. They haven't found any traction in over 10 years. I shouldn't say not any, but they've found very little traction with that. Because the consumer, at least at this stage, is buying organic because they perceive it to be good for them rather than good for the environment. The mindset is, I don't want to eat the chemicals. So if you could establish the pesticide-free as a valid branding on your behalf, you might be able to be successful. But I think the target would be organic because it is such a national standard and there's trust in the procedures that you have to follow to keep the certification after you receive it. So I think that's the challenge, is competing outside of that organic seal. I will add, though, that the local trend is more powerful today than organic. That consumers often think local means organic when it does not. But there's more momentum behind local, there's more sales volume behind local, there's more dollars behind local. But organic is really appealing to, I want to eat better and I think this is better for me, where local has so many other nuances to it. So at least in the US marketplace, local would be a bigger play than pesticide-free if you weren't going all the way to organic.
Another question in the back there?
Sorry about that. My name is John Said. I'm the Managing Director of Fresh Select. We're a vertically integrated farming company in Australia. With all the economic pressure that exists around, the US, Europe, Australia, consumers are forever looking for value, and generally value is in, price-pointed value. In particular here in Australia, that's what we experience. All your magnificent ideas and packaging and so on adds a lot of cost to product. There's one of two things that happen: either that cost is sent to the consumer, or that cost is reduced to the raw material end of the supply chain. My question is, do you think consumers globally will keep paying for innovation?
Yes, I do. I think they are. I think when companies truly match their product offering to something that consumers respond to, they can command a price that covers the cost of producing that product and leaves a good profit margin. I'm not saying that's easy. And I know that you work in a business where you've had to deal with costs, and costs are important. And that's where getting it right is the hard work. Doing the research, the consumer research, having a value proposition, whether it's health and functional foods or convenience or whatever the right mix of what you're trying to deliver is, getting those things right before you invest in the higher added costs, that's what's critical. It's positioning your product. And I think when you look at the products in the US that have been successful, they've pretty much pioneered new categories. There wasn't a prepared salads category. And then they first started chopping lettuce, and consumers said, well, chopped lettuce is nice, but I still have to figure out what to do with it. And it wasn't until they got the salad kits that they could really unlock more value. So I think it's that process of identifying the right thing that adds value, because as I showed the example of the potato, the purple potato in the steamable bag, not a lot of value there. You're not helping the consumer understand that product and know what to do with it. I'd say that would be an example like you gave, where they spent a lot of money on packaging and they probably didn't get the return on that. You have to figure out a better offering and one that connects, and then you'd have the opportunity. So I think it's all about getting that value proposition and product development right.
Yeah. David, I've seen you shaking your head over there. I think you probably have something to add to that.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Tim said. I mean, you really need to do your homework. And the idea of consumers are seeking innovative new products, and but it is a matter of not just newness for newness sake. Is consumers, when they see something new and different that is relevant for them, they recognized it. They will recognize it and will buy it. The question is, how do you design products that will target opportunities where people are kind of the soft spots in the marketplace, as I like to think about it. It's those opportunities where it's more you're understanding what people are seeking, you know, and the value they're looking for, rather than pushing something out to the market to get them to buy it. And I think that's sort of the going upstream idea, is you really need to do your homework, understand moments of opportunity, and then think about solutions, you know, how to create that value that people will recognize. I think that's the challenge for us, and it's a pull versus push marketing that is, I think, will win the day for a lot of new innovations in the future.
Other questions? There's a question here. Is that? Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, Richard Hickman, Bayer Crop Science. So I commend each of the speakers. My question is still going to be to Mr. O'Connor, but I could have several questions for each of you. But I'd just like to make a comment. And when I saw your presentation, one of the things that struck me was that picture with the cartoon on it. You know, just a penny drop with me. And I mean, I think we're competing in a market. You know, the total market is 22 million stomachs in Australia. And they can be either filled with 4 and 20 pies or Pringles or whatever, or they can be filled with vegetables. And we're in a competitive market trying to fill those stomachs. The difference is that 4 and 20 and Nabisco and whatever, they have massive marketing budgets, and they really can create very, very compelling product offers and so on. And what we saw on the screen there was an attempt to try to match that. And I think it's until we really grapple with that situation, that we have to compete and create very compelling product offers, it's going to be difficult to arrest the decline in I think there is a decline in vegetable consumption now. So my question for Mr. O'Connor is, we have a challenge here in Australia. We have a large ethnic base and we have a huge opportunity going up into Asia, a very big ethnic opportunity, Asian ethnic opportunity. Are there examples of ethnic targeted product offers, and have they been successful at all? Because they could be useful, you know, to segment our own market locally, but also to produce some products that are very compelling for Asia.
So, ethnic products. Mm-hmm. You know, there certainly is a great opportunity, and there's sort of, to me, there's layers to it. So there's certainly ethnic communities that exist that want foods that are traditional for them, and that's a great opportunity. And you have to understand them and be able to connect the products with them authentically. But then there's also the notion that we're a more sophisticated consumer marketplace today than we've ever been. We don't want to eat like our parents and our grandparents ate. We want to live in a culture where, you know, tonight we might eat Vietnamese, tomorrow we might want to eat Mexican, the next night we might want to eat Italian. And so we want to have that opportunity to really eat around the globe. And so ethnic foods are not just niche products that fit into, you know, somebody's national heritage. They're the opportunity to experiment with cuisine and to blend cuisines. Fusion cuisine is really a growing trend, at least in the US. And the opportunity to take something like an Asian style of cooking and blend it with a Mexican style of cooking really has popped up. We have got a really significant phenomenon in the US. Street food comes out of food trucks, very trendy, very upscale. A lot of high-end chefs have really put themselves into that marketplace, trying to create breakthrough products, things that are exciting and really create new categories. And it really is all about eating around the globe and experimenting different flavorings, and produce plays such a central role in all of that. And the opportunity for produce to be looked at as really an artistic canvas, where you can paint any picture you want by using the right produce items to get the story that you want to tell on the plate. So I think it's a huge opportunity, and it is very creative and very artistic.
Can I ask if any of the other panel members would like to comment on that question?
Just to add, because from idea, I love the idea of ethnicity and ethnic foods around the world is important, but also this idea of cultural cues in foods. So different cultures will pick up on different sort of signals in how you design your foods. So if you're going to design, so not only the ethnicity, the style of food that you're trying to create, but also you need to understand the culture itself and how they will view the food, from packaging colors, it might signal in one culture something very different. So you can't just develop a product and put labels on different languages and send it around the world and expect it to sell, because you need to do your homework and how the food form, shape, and not only the packaging but the product itself, what it signals itself to people, and to be able to create, to make it something that people will actually buy and use, recognize the value.
Thank you. We have a question here.
Good morning. Bill Bormer, Director of Bormer's Farm Fresh Vegetables in East Gippsland, Victoria. Comment and probably a question to you, David. A colleague said over here before, we're only a country of 22 million people and very, very spread. We produce a lot of food in this country, a lot of good fresh food. We've got the same constraints as everybody else. The mother, or whoever the shopper is, goes in, busy people. They've got a huge array of things to pick from. And to get the message of all these great messages you're putting out there, it's great for you, it's healthy and whatever. What it comes down to in the end, the bottom line is how much money that person has in their wallet or their purse that goes out the end of the checkout. Whether it's convenient or not, sometimes is totally relevant. How do we educate? So, you talk about the mindset. How do we change that mindset? Are we going to change the mindset of all the people that are in this room in our age bracket, or should we be looking at educating the younger generation, the kids? Because the kids are the ones that will tell us in the future how we're going to live and what we're going to do. So they're all good ideas, but maybe we're targeting the wrong people or that mindset. Because when I go to the pub, I don't go in for a glass of water. I go there for a beer. I know it might be good for me, but that's what I want. So as a vegetable farmer, I know growing all those things are good for me too, but I still like to eat a steak. So for us as growers in Australia, I think that our educating our young ones and changing that mindset will be where we will lead to in the future. What do you think about that, Dave?
Certainly, education is important, awareness. So let's break down, the different parts. One is educating, parents, and to what is healthy, what is, ways in which. So there's a lot of information out there, and people can get online if they are interested and learn about that. There's a lot of misinformation out there because of, the internet. So part one is really, the information that people have, the sources that they choose, whether it's word of mouth, whether it's some technical expert, do people view things that come out of the government, or out of a university, or different sources, or a marketing campaign for a brand, do people trust these different sources, and that's part one to your answer is that's changing all the time because of the internet, and and that impacts what people buy. Sometimes you see things that hit the wires, they hit the media, and people react really fast within, a day or so. And but part two are kids. The idea of cues and what things signal to kids, that comes from a long process of training. And so it's not necessarily educating, but we become, behaviors change slowly by changing the cues and the signals that they actually provide. Does that make sense? So by training, by having kids, to be exposed to different foods and flavors, rather than giving kids only what they desire, what they see on, say, television or whatever, is part of the problem. We're not getting kids exposed to different flavors and things like that. So it's training the mind through repeat is really how you change behaviors. And I think that's the challenge is as parents getting kids to actually consume things in different ways. But you need to make it things that kids will make it fun for kids, or make it something that kids will recognize as something that they really would like to as well. So it's, to me, in answering your question, it's part the education, getting the right sources of information to parents, but it's also training kids, through parenting, getting kids to be exposed to different flavors and accept that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned education, but I think probably education is more important to the parents. I agree with that, because when you grow up in an environment, you used to French fry and fried chicken, and it's really, people are very stubborn about their food. It's really difficult to change. And also, if you want to get the health benefit for fruits and vegetable, you're not considering like one fruit a week or a month. You need to do it every day or most of the day, like changing completely your dietary habits. So we need to really start from young. And once people develop what they like to put into their mouths, it's very difficult to change. So educating the parents probably very, very important. And I think now with the changing of social media, Facebook, Twitter, and those are probably also a very important aspect to educate the people, no matter it's parents or the young people. Yeah.
I'd like to make a comment here too as well. I've traveled fairly extensively in Asia, in China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. And also I have two young adult daughters, one 19, one 22. And one of the things I've seen wherever I go, particularly in Asia, is the connectedness. The smartphone really rules today. People are highly connected. I think it's not just about the messages we send that educate consumers, but also have to be aware that we need to hit those points of interest and attraction well, because if you get it wrong, the messages go out very quickly, and you can kill a product very, very quickly if people send out the wrong messages. So understanding consumers, I think, is going to be really critical going forward. Are there any other questions from the audience at this point?
Thank you. Mike Badcock, I'm a cropping farmer from northwest coast Tasmania. Our situation in Australia, we have 75% of the marketing power vested with two major players in Australia. And I was interested in your comments re Amazon Fresh with online ordering, and the potential for, say, producer groups to get together and supply online direct from the farm to the consumer. Is that an option for Australia?
Well, certainly it is. In fact, there would be examples of growers who are already doing that. I think the challenge is to think through the business model carefully and be able to have a distribution system that works for you, a packaging and handling system that works for you, and really have that all thought through, because you're potentially going to get orders from anywhere. Can you fulfill them? You're going to get perhaps more orders than you anticipated. Can you deal with them timely? But yeah, I think the opportunity to connect food with consumers at the level of the grower, tell the story, open up their understanding of what you do to produce the food as a bundle in which you use to market yourself and your products is a very rich opportunity. But you're going to be competing against everyone else. You're going to be competing against big brands. You're going to be competing against big companies that are in the business of internet business. For example, Amazon. Amazon is in a huge internet ordering and distribution program. They have the logistics down. They know how to get product all over the world. Whatever that product is, you can order anything from Amazon and they can deliver it to you. So you have to think it through, but yes, you have a great opportunity and you can really connect differently today than you could even 10 years ago. So clearly that's an area to think through and explore, and you could do business there very successfully if you get it right.
Yeah, I'll add is that I think if, getting back to my concluding remarks about feeding the world and that challenge, it's going to take a lot of different types of solutions. And the solution you're talking about of connecting people quickly, right to the grower through distribution, local distribution sort of models, business models, I think is part of that solution. The more we can do that, the more, in areas where it makes sense, then it takes the pressure off of in areas where it doesn't make sense. And so you're not going to be able to have that model work necessarily the same way in a mega city where you have most of the population of the world going to be growing. But there, who knows, maybe the Amazon type of model is the start of something, a different way in which you can quickly get distribution in a mega city. I don't know, but Amazon, to my knowledge, is still not making any money at it, but they have a business model where they'll be persistent and figure it out and eventually start making money. So I think it's a good question. I think it's there's a lot of challenges, but I agree, you got to think through the business model, who you're going to target, and probably keep it local, before trying to be an Amazon.
Other questions from the audience or comments?
Nick Trandos from Western Australia, Perth. Just for the information of the three guest speakers from the United States, Western Australia turned the lights on when astronaut Armstrong was going around just to show him he's in a good place. The question I ask you is, under our system of levy, we are not allowed to use any of that levy for promotion. It appears to me now that the grower, I have done all the research in growing and marketing, but we can't use any of that levy for promotion of our produce. We can say what we like, but the consumer out there needs to know more. And when we come to these conferences, we're all aware of what's happening, but the average consumer out there knows that very little about our product. Unless we use some of the levy towards promotion of our industry, then I think we will have a battle to convince growers that, or consumer that the produce they're buying is good for you.
Well, I'll respond to that first. I have worked with programs that use grower levies to do marketing. I did that with avocados, I did that with potatoes, I did that with beef. So I think the quick answer that I would give you is I agree completely that that's an appropriate investment. It's an investment that benefits everyone in the industry. Again, as I said many times, if you get it right. And that's also the challenge of it is, and it kind of ties in with the question that the gentleman over here asked earlier about, are we targeting our marketing correctly as individual companies? And I think it's shouting about nutrition in fruits and vegetables is always what the industry wants to do, and it does make some sense. Fruits and vegetables are extremely healthy. And we know, if you look out into the future far enough, people are going to change their eating habits over time. It's going to be gradual, but people are concerned about their health. As the population ages, they're going to eat differently. That's going to change culture, but it's not going to be a revolution. It's going to be an evolutionary process. Governments are highly focused on it. You know, everybody's grandmother told them to eat their fruits and vegetables, and they still aren't doing it the way they should be. So the question about marketing is always what to do, what's the right thing to do, and it's figuring out a positioning, and it's developing and testing the right messages to ensure that they deliver value. But I think marketing work on behalf of the fruits and vegetables in the competition in the food industry, all the issues that are out there of obesity and choices that people make, marketing is extremely important. And I would say it's a great debate for you to have as an industry, how to invest some of your levy in the right marketing that can help the whole industry. And it really would be of great value to you if you can figure that out and get a return on investment back, that you're moving consumer opinions positively about fruits and vegetables, and that translate into, you know, increased consumption over time.
I'd like to comment on that as well. Just looking at my papers for this afternoon, while there's restrictions on the use of our levy for marketing directly, and this goes to the government's viewpoint on competitive neutrality and allowing producers to market in a free market, Horticulture Australia does invest substantial amounts of money in a program called Consumer Alignment. So we are looking at, for example, understanding consumers, how they behave, and some of the opportunities there are for improving the marketing of fresh vegetables and produce. So that if you're looking forward to developing marketing strategies and looking at ways to enhance the value of your products, I think it's important for you to be aware of some of the research developments that are coming out of our R&D program, so that you can take advantage of those as you go forward. So it's not necessarily that your levy money is not going toward that aim, but it's the final step, the final marketing that really is up to the producers and people along the supply chain to finally add that promotional activity.
Hello, Salah Sakaria, University of Sydney. I'm going to comment, maybe it's coming at it from a technology end, because we've talked a lot about smartphones and the use from there, and I'm just looking at previous examples that I've worked in other industries and trying to look at it in the context here of food production. The value space is small, so when you have many consumers who want different choices, you start to then kind of break down and segment your market even smaller and smaller to satisfy those choices, and between two different choices it could be a very small amount. And for what I've seen in other industries, that requires just more and more technology getting thrown into it, whether it's on the farm, through the logistics chain, into the distribution and so forth. And that requires a lot of money, which is why we're seeing players like Amazon and so forth get into it, or Monsanto as well recently doing that. And so I'm just trying to understand, where does it all end? Because if we keep going through with the consumer what they want, you kind of have to kind of go more and more fine-tune in the products that you deliver.
Yeah, so a couple things that come to mind in response. First is the role of technology in how that's changing consumer behavior. We just published some research was funded through a company called Catalina in the US, and Catalina is involved in Shopper in printing out receipts that have coupons and stuff like that at a point of checkout counter. And so they're very interested in consumer behavior in retail environments, in grocery stores especially. And the research that we did with them showed that more and more people, most people in the US, over about 85% of people are utilizing technology in some way to make choices. in the grocery store, as well as in other retails. And it's not just, it's looking up things, checking out deals, looking at pricing, seeing where else they can get something. You know, that sort of research, preparing, and also is used a lot in preparing to shop. What is happening is that the technology is reducing the time between when somebody is preparing to shop and when they actually buy things. So not only what they're buying. People that use technology have bigger basket ring, so that's a really interesting trend, how that is impacting consumer behavior. I've not done any research in Australia, but I would suspect it's very similar in how it's impacting, or will soon impact in a great way, how people buy things. And around the world I suspect is the same. The other question you had I thought was talking about how markets are getting more and more fragmented, and which I think is also an interesting thing, is how there's more and more targeting to very small niche markets. And that's a trend, I think, also around the world. So in the marketing of things for niche marketing versus very broad-based, I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And technology is helping to drive that, because people are able to search for something that's just for them, fitting the moments in their lives, and can find products, much easier through technology. So it's helping that niche marketing be something that you can really utilize, and I think it's something worthwhile. So I hope I answered your questions on those two parts. Yeah. Is it what? I can't hear you.
Fragile, is it making it fragile?
Fragile. In what way? Markets making... I don't think so. I think, I don't see, maybe you have some more thoughts on that, Tim, or whatever, but I don't see that as being a problem. It's just a different type of marketing.
No, I would like to add, and I think, I hope this ties into some of the questions. I think it's actually more of an opportunity than a problem. Because I think when you do marketing, and I'm going to put my marketer's hat on and develop your strategy about marketing, it's really about targeting. It's about identifying who do I want to talk to, and why do I want to talk to them, and what is it I can tell them that creates an upside potential for me. So I'll give you a tangible example, so this is not just some BS up here that doesn't mean anything. We had this problem in the U.S. potato industry when the Atkins diet came out in 2004, and we saw tremendous erosion just overnight in the attitudes consumers had about the nutritional value of potatoes. It dropped 17 points in just moments after the Atkins diet was the rage. The Atkins diet was on every talk show, every newspaper. You were just blasted with the Atkins diet for about 6 months. You were going to look sexy and live forever if you got on the Atkins diet. That's just all there was to it. And everybody believed that. And so carbohydrates became the villain, and first and foremost was potatoes. And we were challenged, with the grower Levy, what were we going to do about this problem? Because this was a significant problem. And we started out saying, well, we want to tell people the Atkins diet is stupid. And so we tested some messages, not quite that aggressive, but messages about the Atkins diet. And when we tested those messages, they fell right on their face. Everybody's had an uncle, a friend, a brother, somebody who'd lost a bunch of weight, looks great. The Atkins diet, of course, works. That's what we all want. We want to look great. So then we went back and we developed other messages, and we identified that the real opportunity was to connect potatoes again with mom. Mom made sense for so many reasons. Mothers with children in households were the decision makers, the gatekeepers about meal preparation. And when we dug deeply and we really dissected down into the moms who cook were really the moms we wanted to target, because those moms were going to want to use fresh ingredients, and you feed their family a meal they like, and it's healthy for them. When we dialed in to the data set and we identified, well, who are these moms? And we personified them. We called her Linda, and we built a whole story about who Linda is and what she is and her behavioral, attitudinal characteristics. It came down to the fact there were 30 million Lindas in the US who were feeding another 150 million people in their family. We could target 30 million people. We could connect with almost 200 million people by doing that. That's when your question of technology and targeted marketing becomes really relevant. Now that we have a 30 million person target, and we know about this person's behavior and where she goes for information, how she shops, what she does, we could take rifle shots at her. And we really rapidly turned that problem around because we understood where her thinking was, where her behavior was, how she cooked her meals, how she planned her meals, and we targeted those. And we totally erased that erosion, and we grew potato consumption in a very short period of time with not huge budgets because we got down to that target level. So technology was a big part of that. You know, there are so many businesses that are just internet-based. I don't know about Australia, but I don't think anybody buys an automobile or a truck today that doesn't go right to the internet first, or a house. You're not going to go to the newspaper anymore for that kind of decision making. It is about technology, and it really is getting more mobile every day. And I could talk a long time about mobile, but I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, we've had a chance to listen to 3 very stimulating presentations this morning. Tim O'Connor has told us about consumer trends and how we need to link the convenience and consumer behavior. We heard about functional foods with Xiao, and David Lundahl gave us some insights into psychology of consumer behavior. And I hope that you've been able to take away from that some interesting ideas that you can work and build on. Before I go, though, I just want to say that if you have any questions that you haven't had answered, Mr. Alexander Miller at AUSVEG will be prepared to accept your questions and seek to get answers for you. So please remember that name, Alexander Miller, as you go on. But just in closing then, please once again join me in thanking our 3 speakers.